ESPN have announced they no longer wish to retain the services of one of the most influential sports writers of the 21st century. Bill Simmons' contract, which ends in September this year, won't be renewed. At ESPN, Simmons is an extremely popular columnist and podcaster. The 30 for 30 documentary series he produced won awards and is one of the best products ESPN has. He spent time as a television talking head, probably his worst role. And he is editor-in-chief of a site he built featuring sports and pop culture. So, his effective termination matters, if only because one of the sports media world's highest profile talents is a free agent. The announcement, which was made without Simmons' knowledge, appears to have come after he went on Dan Patrick's radio show and fired a shot at NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, saying he lacked testicular fortitude to punish the New England Patriots. That comes after Simmons was suspended for 3 weeks last year, for a rant about Goodell's inability to look after players, appropriately punish indiscretions in how he panders to the millionaires and billionaires that own the league. ESPN happens to have a multi-billion-dollar commercial partnership with the NFL, so that just might have come into calculations. Calling out the commissioner of the richest sports league in the world when many others won't is sure to get the executives hot under the collar. Now other entities have a chance to bid for one of the loudest voices, biggest personal audiences and creative minds in the industry. Simmons is one of the most influential sports writers in decades because he did a very rare thing: he helped pioneer a new form of publishing and journalism. For decades, sports writing had been dominated by beat reporters and insiders that took some of the tactics of political journalism and applied them to sports journalism. Simmons' approach was based on the belief that sport is for the fans, and that was the perspective that influenced his writing. He admitted biases and wrote through them like a rally driver steering into the slide. He also added a healthy dose of pop culture to his sports writing. On a personal note, Simmons has been one of my favorite writers for a long time, partly because his story inspired me that it wasn't too late to get into journalism. Simmons wrote on a blog until he was 30, living in a Boston flat, while working in a pub and waiting for a break. That pattern is an outsized version of my time working in dead-end jobs like call centers while trying to find a place for my craft. Simmons is still a largely singular figure. Not many others had built a profile and following in the way he has. His columns were routinely read by close to 1 million people. His podcast was downloaded 32 million times in 2013. He won a Peabody and Emmy for the documentary series. In Australia, his comparative popularity dwarfs anyone writing about sports. It would be like Andrew Webster, Richard Hines, Brett McKay, pay me later for the plug made, Rebecca Wilson, Greg Groudon, Buzz Rothfield, Gerard Whitley being let go all at once. And even then the scale wouldn't be the same. That gap is widened because Australian media has been slow to adapt to the internet, giving space to quality alternatives such as The Roar. How many Australian writers carry an audience big enough to build a site around? Simmons has been the editor-in-chief of Grantland for the 5 years since he opened it under the ESPN banner. It is now one of the best sources of long-form sports journalism in the world, with a sprinkling of pop culture for spice. The site was launched around Simmons' own popularity, but as editor-in-chief he has built something rare: a place where talented writers are paid well, edited well and have a buffer between them and the rest of the fast-moving media industry. Under those conditions many new writers have flourished. And my Fairfax editors will tell you I am always badgering them about more innovative ways to host stories, such as this wonderful production of Brian Phillips' National Magazine award-winning piece on Grantland. Grantland is the second way Simmons was one of a few pioneers. He was a personal brand around which a larger entity launched an entire site. Monday Morning Quarterback with Peter King, Vox with Ezra Klein and 538 with Nate Silver are others that have done it since. Like this writer at Slate, I hope Grantland isn't left to wither by ESPN now that Simmons is out. But without Simmons' loyal audience, the site, which don't have spectacular traffic in its own right, may struggle. But this article raises another thing I'd like to address. Many of the new wave of internet writers seemingly love to slag off Simmons for his perceived shallowness. I think it is partly because of Simmons' success. Most writers don't get a following big enough to build their own brand that has real gravity beyond the masthead they write for.